Welcome back to Lights Inside the Tunnel, a podcast where we take an intersectional and interfaithful look at what social justice means in the time of social distancing. I'm your host, Fiona, and this is our second episode, Don't Be a Fossil Fool. Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us for our second episode. I am super excited about today's guest and our conversation, so I just want to jump right in. Our guest today is a phenomenal human being. He is incredibly funny and super talented, but he has an even bigger heart. It's Luke Giunta. Luke, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. You make me feel like Gandhi.
Do you get that nice of a intro on your own podcast?
No, not really. Marty and I fight a lot, so.
All right, so I'll talk to him a little later. That's a shameless plug. Go listen to Luke and Matt Bavette's podcast.
Muddied Waters.
Also, yeah, it's also great. If you need to laugh a little bit and feel good about the world, go listen to that. Okay, Luke. Before we get started, I have a question for you.
Sure.
You ready? What is your favorite thing about going to a Jesuit school?
I think it's the people.
Yeah,
I realized this when I went to St. Peter's my freshman year. I kind of struggled socially a lot when I was younger, especially in like grammar school. And when I went to prep, what we called it, everybody was just so friendly and they kind of just cared about you on a deeper level.
yeah.
And I never got that with people at home. I mean, like obviously family and stuff, but like other kids, you know.
Yeah.
And I was scared about that coming to Lemoyne, but I was completely wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that that's probably my favorite thing too, just in the sense that I think if you get a Jesuit education, you're guaranteed a great community, no matter where you go.
Absolutely.
Like my top 3 schools for college were all Jesuit schools, and I knew that no matter which one I picked, I was going to end up being happy there because they all just had such great feelings of community there.
Yeah.
So I asked, because this week, when this podcast is posted, is Ignatian Heritage Week, which celebrates the values of St. Ignatius and our history of the Jesuits.
Ooh.
So, yeah, even though we're not on campus ministry is still celebrating. So everyone who's listening should go to the Lemoyne Facebook and Instagram page, like campus ministry pages, to find out what is happening. There's going to be a special Jesuit-themed trivia event tomorrow on Wednesday, April 15th at 9:30 p.m. For more information, just check out the social media. If you don't want to do it for Luke or me, do it for our Jesuits because they're awesome.
Do it for me too, though.
Do it for Luke too. All right. So Luke and I are celebrating Ignatian Heritage Week right now by talking about taking care of God's creation. But before we get into all that good stuff, Luke, how are you? How's your family? How's your community?
My community of 3 in this household is it's going all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of Netflix binging. You ever watch Grace and Frankie?
No, but I don't need any more recommendations because I should be doing work. But it's cat's out of the bag. You've made the recommendation.
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
I've been doing a lot of homework, obviously, and you know, I've been talking to Matt Bavet a lot recently too about the podcast and stuff. And a great thing about this time home was talking with you guys, you, Danny, and Mia.
Yeah.
About what's happening with sustainability on campus.
Yeah, I feel like even though we're not on campus, so many people are still doing really great work, and I kind of feel like I'm still a part of the campus community, even though we're not all together, which has been really great.
Absolutely.
Because it's, going home for the summer is always sad, but so, going home for this was kind of even more sad.
That times too.
Yeah, but we're doing it for a good reason.
Yeah, and I think that this virus is especially like a wake-up call.
Yeah.
I think we need to learn from this. It offers us a chance to take better care of ourselves, but also like other things. It offers us like an opportunity, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I feel like a lot of people, including myself, are paying attention to things that I wasn't necessarily paying attention to before. which is really important. And it's taking some time just to like reflect and like be conscious of the world, but without having to like leave my home so I can kind of just absorb it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So maybe this is a good place to start talking about sustainability.
Um, so I think that being away from campus all this time, I think this offers us an opportunity to utilize the time we have to focus on planning efforts for the fall as far as sustainable
Yeah.
things. So, like, I mean, this past spring, Physical Plant and Forces put up these recycling guide posters in the resident halls, but I think we should probably plan to do some more things in the fall. I was talking with some people, including Fiona,
Yeah.
about doing something almost like Earth Day in the fall because we weren't able to celebrate it this past spring.
Yeah. And you and I, like we had big plans for Earth Day.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we can tell everybody a little bit about that. So, we were going to do like an Earth Day weekend kind of thing, like celebrate the earth, take care of the earth, on that Friday. So Earth Day is like going to be a Wednesday or something. But on that Friday, we were going to do, like a climate solidarity rally, that people do all over the country. You went to one of those, didn't you? Or did you plan on going to one?
I went to a zero waste summit. I want to say
Mm,
2 months ago, maybe roughly.
yeah.
That was really cool. I met with people from all over, what was it, the Northeast. A lot of people from SUNY ESF, but we talked about how we can how we can strategize certain programs so that we can limit
Yeah.
our waste output. Um, and one of the other components of the Earth Day thing we were going to do was doing a campus-wide cleanup.
Yes.
We were going to do stuff in the Lemoyne Woods, and we were thinking about busing people to other places. So
Yeah.
we might do that in the fall if we can.
Yeah, I think we should. I think there's like a United Nations like Earth Summit or something that happens in like September, so maybe we can plan it around that. I don't know.
That'd be cool.
But I'd like to do something again. Um and it gives us more time to plan,
Yeah,
which is
there's
nice.
there's also Coastal Cleanup Day, which I believe is September 21st.
Oh,
So we could do something around
yeah.
then. We did that this past fall. Another shameless plug. One of my club, Forces, is Lemoyne's Environmental Club, and we do a lot of cleanups in the Lemoyne Woods and other areas. So
Yeah,
if anyone's interested in getting involved,
sign up.
yeah.
So I'm glad you brought up forces, and I want to talk more about that. But first, I just want to ask you, so, what does sustainability mean to you? And I know you're really passionate about this topic. When did you become so involved in just advocating and working for environmental justice?
I think that really started for me in Boy Scouts. Um, they always taught us like leave no trace, and that's like picking up your stuff, and cleaning up the campsite and just leaving nature as little disturbed as possible. And like
Hmm.
that was minor, but what really started it was, I guess, like Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah,
Me being from Jersey, uh, Jersey got impacted from Sandy the most. My local environmental center, it was a wetlands, and the place got flooded, and a bunch of local vegetation was taken off. So then it was like derooted.
yeah.
So then for my Eagle Scout project, I like restored a little bit of it, and that kind of got me interested in the environment.
I feel like we kind of low key have a brain meld right now because one of the questions that I actually had was to ask you about, um, the impact of Hurricane Sandy on your community.
Yeah, it was big.
Yeah.
I mean, up by me, well, I'm in northern Jersey, and
Hmm.
we got impacted by Sandy definitely, but Irene was definitely worse because
Okay.
what you saw in Irene was more river flooding because
Mm,
of its trajectory, and then in Sandy it was more coastal flooding, and that's why southern Jersey got hit hard.
yeah.
But my family, ironically, we just got a house down the shore like 2 months before Sandy, and then
Ugh.
and then Sandy flooded and the house was destroyed.
No.
But FEMA covered it, so
Oh, that's good.
we,
Shout out to the federal government.
word we got hooked up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that sometimes, I mean, I remember this was a conversation that I was having with people. I was in my senior year of high school, so you would have been a freshman in college when, Hurricane Harvey and I think Hurricane Irene were the same year. like same school year, hit. And I was talking to people, and people were like, well, you know what? Like, hurricanes have always happened. I don't know why all of a sudden, like, we're making such a big deal about them. Um, One, I mean, we're making a big deal about them because people are losing their lives, their livelihoods,
Yeah.
and their, shelter and homes. But also, hurricanes are getting worse as the the global temperature is rising.
Yeah. That increases precipitation amounts because of low pressure systems, I believe, and
Mm,
that makes them more intense. Um,
yeah.
I think it was Sandy. It had like an insane amount of rainfall.
Yes, yeah, I remember.
But
I mean, so I'm in upstate New York, or I'm in Western New York. I actually get kind of pressed when people say that we're in upstate New York. I'm not in upstate New York. Although I love upstate for all our upstate listeners. But we actually got the day off school when Sandy was hitting land in New Jersey, because we were getting rain and high winds and big, pressure fronts over here.
mhm.
And it is about so I have family in southern Jersey, and it's about a 9-hour drive, right? So like just think about like
Well,
that's the distance.
mhm.
And school got canceled in October because it was so bad.
Yeah, we got canceled. I was in eighth grade when wait, was it eighth grade? Yeah, eighth grade when Sandy hit, and we got, I want to say like 3 days off because everything was just messed up really bad.
Yeah.
But down the shore, I mean, I didn't go because my parents didn't want me to, but my brother, he's a state trooper, and he was down
Mm.
there because it was a state of emergency, and he saw one of the houses had a gas leak, and it lit on fire,
Oh.
and then it lit a whole block on fire, and it was insane.
Oh my God.
But I think what was special about Sandy is that it brought pretty much everybody in the state of New Jersey together.
Mm-hmm.
There was this big campaign put out by Christie's administration. It was called "Stronger Than the Storm," and it was. I remember playing it. It was playing on the TV all of the time. But
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
and I remember it was a moment when kind of the whole world coalesced together, in the sense that I think like right around that time was the 2012 election, when Obama got reelected, and just like a couple weeks before, Christie had been out campaigning for Mitt Romney. But then there was like a huge video of the two of them like meeting up in the some of the worst hit areas, and like hugging, and just really coming together. And I think that, one, I highlight that story because I think that that's kind of what is happening and needs to be happening right now
yeah,
around this virus. Like, we all need to be coalescing. But I also think it's like um a story about climate change on a micro scale that we need to talk about on the macro scale. Like, if we're going to fight like changes in our environment, we all have to come together and like put differences aside just to take care of our most vulnerable.
I forget where this quote is from, but sustainability isn't about doing everything perfect, or it isn't about one person doing everything perfect. It's about everybody doing everything imperfect. I think that's the quote.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. I've never heard that before. I think that's a really great. I know. I think that's such a good idea. I mean, because sometimes I feel hopeless. I'm like, what is the fact like that I'm, putting all my stuff in recycling? What is that really going to do in the large scheme? But like, I think that's kind of counterproductive, right? Because if I'm putting everything in recycling and everybody else is putting everything in recycling, like we're doing something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read off the correct quote just so
All right.
yeah. So this is a quote by Anne Marie Bonneau of Zero Waste Society. We don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. And
Mm, that's great.
yeah, I think it's just this accumulation of improvement over time um,
Yeah.
on everything that we can just do.
Yeah. So on that note, give me your pitch. So say I'm like, I don't really know why I should care about climate change or sustainability. Give me your pitch as to why I should.
Um, so one of the big realizations I had when coming to Lemoyne and talking about sustainability was in Global Resources by Dr. McCrimmon.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave us this book. It was called Climate of Hope.
Mm.
Book written by former New York Mayor, what's his name, Michael Bloomberg, and then
Yes.
former president or CEO of the High Sierra Society. I think that's what it's called. Carl Pope. And
Mm.
one of the things Bloomberg talked about was that climate change isn't just an environmental issue; it's also a human issue.
Yes.
So, like, if we don't take care of our carbon dioxide emissions, it could also impact human health, like asthma.
Yeah.
He cited, I believe, the amount of asthma in people has grown over the years,
Mm-hmm.
correlating with, or coinciding with emission rates.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a really important point. I used to fall into this trap of thinking that it's like, of course I care about the environment, but I would say to myself, there's so many other issues that are affecting people right now. Like, the environment seems kind of a distant conversation,
Mm.
but my mindset has completely changed over these past couple years because I've realized how much of an intersectional issue climate injustice
Yeah.
is. Just like, if you care about a refugee crisis, like you should care about climate change because climate change creates refugees. You know, if you care about racism and racial discrimination, you should care about climate change because climate change disproportionately affects our communities of color. If we care about our farm workers, if we care about gender equity, global poverty, like all of these issues have such deep ties to climate justice. So I think that this is just like an issue that has the potential for all of us to coalesce around. We just have to actually do the coalescing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Question. Have
Yeah,
you ever
go for it.
been to the Ignatian Family Teach-In?
I have.
Okay, great. All right, good. I was gonna say you should definitely go. I didn't know if you went.
Have you been?
Yeah, I went. What was it? 3 times?
Oh my God. Can you go next year?
I might.
Please. We can go together.
Ayo.
It'll be so much fun.
Let's do it.
Yeah. We had a great time this past year. And one of the topics this year was climate justice.
I remember. I think it was either my first time, which was 2016, or the year before me. But like the whole theme was climate justice.
Yeah. Yeah. So they brought that back this past year, and I have a feeling that it might be next year too.
Ooh.
Because there was overlap. So I went for the first time, not this past year, but the year before that, and it was like resolving the refugee crisis and humane immigrant or not humane. I already said that. Humane criminal justice reform. And this year it was solving the refugee crisis and climate justice. So I feel like if they're gonna take an issue and translate it to next year, I think it might be climate justice, which would be really exciting.
I'm down to clown with that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you guys heard it here first. Luke's going to the Teach-In next year.
Join me. Join me and Fiona.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so much fun. So much fun. It's a good time. Okay. So you're Catholic.
Yep.
Right? I thought so, but I just had a moment where I was like, well, maybe he's not. uh, the Pope talks a lot about Pope Francis talks a lot about climate justice. And you'll hear a lot of people, specifically who come from a faith background, talking about Laudato Si, which is an encyclical that Pope Francis wrote about taking care of the earth. Can you tell me a little bit about, just like how your faith informs your belief in caring for the planet?
I think that my faith definitely highlights like just how beautiful the world is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sounds kind of hippie free love type thing, but one of the things I think about is like the ocean. When I'm on the Jersey Shore, like when you're on the beach or just anywhere serene, like I just think like that. It's special, like how lucky are we to just be able to be here and just enjoy everything that's so serene and beautiful, and like that motivates people like me to protect it, and just do things that we can to make sure it's okay.
Yeah, no, and I mean that's a really deep question. So sorry if you weren't expecting it, but for me, like I also think like that my faith definitely informs my compassion for the earth, just in the sense that in my freshman year of high school, we did a whole religion class on the Old Testament, and I just think about the fact that the world doesn't belong to
Mm.
us, and that we're the stewards of it, and we're here to take care of it. And I also think, I'm like, I think about all of my ancestors who took care of the earth, doing what they could so that I could be here today. And it would be really nice if I could do that for generations to come. Yeah. All right. So you brought up before sustainability on Lemoyne's campus.
Hmm.
Do you want to tell me a little bit about the work that Forces does?
So Forces is a chapter of a larger organization set up by the New York um, State Park System.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a Forces chapter in Lemoyne, SUNY ESF, and I think the rest are also SUNY schools distributed throughout the state. But Forces stands for Friends of Recreation, Conservation, and Environmental Stewardship. And these clubs are meant to promote sustainability on their own campuses while also doing service projects for the parks.
Mm-hmm.
So this past year, Forces has really tried to focus on promoting sustainability on campus, especially considering that the new sustainability steering committee just formed.
Yes.
One thing that we want to create is this kind of relationship between student involvement and faculty and administration plans. Um,
Yeah.
so one of the ways we tried to focus on creating a kind of sustainable culture on campus was through solid waste. That's really the most tangible way and most accessible way we think we can do cause some change.
Mm-hmm.
So we had, what was it, 2 or 3 cleanups in the fall, and then we created recycling guide posters. They're these huge, I think they're 36 by 24-inch posters that are going to be put up in the resident halls and the dorm lobbies, and they inform they inform people how to recycle everything down to the type of plastic, the grade, everything. Um, that way we can improve our habits.
That's awesome. And I feel like that's really helpful, especially for someone like me, because I have a tendency, I'll tell a story. I have a tendency to think everything's recyclable. Um, for example, I was still in high school when I was putting plastic bags in recycling because I think I just naively wanted to hope that they were recyclable. And at one point, my mom was like, Fiona, you like don't put those there. So I think it's just really helpful, just to know like, oh, okay, this can be recycled, this can't be recycled. Oh, this has to be taken to a special place to recycle it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was kind of new to the whole thing myself until this past summer. I worked an internship with this EPS recycling company, and
Ooh,
EPS is what everyone calls. Well, it's not. Styrofoam is extruded polystyrene. We were working with expanded polystyrene, and expanded polystyrene was in like packaging, and extruded polystyrene, that's what people use for food packaging and stuff.
yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that internship?
Yeah, it was pretty great. So we created a recycling guide of best practice for um, the company that we were working for. So it was called Foam Cycle, and they had this huge machine that would crunch up packaging foam, and it
Mm,
would melt it, and then it would shoot out this ingot, and this would be sold at, what was it, landfills, and the landfills would have these machines break it down, and then they would sell it back to Foam Cycle, and then Foam Cycle would create from these styrofoam, or not the styrofoam, from the EPS picture frames.
oh,
And like,
wow. That's really
yeah,
cool.
EPS can actually be used for a wood substitute, and something that they're kind of thinking about doing with this is working in like trailers, mobile homes, because it's lightweight too.
Yeah,
So that's something that's kind of up and coming, kind of.
that's great. Yeah, no, I mean, I think about that a lot because I feel like everything in my life is styrofoam, like in any packages that we order, takeout, like everything comes with styrofoam. So it's like cool to know that, you know, just throwing it out is, there's something more that can be done.
Yeah. Everyone thinks that EPS is like this. You can't recycle it, but in certain forms you can.
Right.
Food styrofoam you really can't because of contamination and stuff. But
Yeah.
packaging foam, like the big stuff, you can definitely recycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, one of the things I learned in my internship was that really recycling is broken down by municipality and like
Mm.
county regulations. So Onondaga County, they recycle, was it type 1, 2, and 5 plastics, but other ones don't. So for
Interesting.
anyone that's interested, definitely go on your municipality's website and look up what they can and can't recycle.
That's a good idea. And what is like, and maybe this is too in the weeds, but like, what are the different types of plastic? Like, how are they? How do you differentiate between types of plastic?
So there's, what is it, 1 through 6. Um, Let me look it up real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. So like,
I mean, I had the most experience with type 6, and that was polystyrene.
mm,
Polystyrene you can't recycle. Type 1 is polyethylene. Type 2 is another form of polyethylene, and type 5 is polypropylene. But I mean, it doesn't really matter about the names. But if you see a plastic material, usually it'll have a triangle with 3 arrows and then a number in the middle of that triangle, and then you could distinguish that
oh,
type.
that's fascinating.
Yeah. So like if you have like a plastic milk carton, just look on the bottom and you'll see
Yeah,
some sort of type. And like red Solo cups, a lot of people don't know those are actually polystyrene, so those can't be recycled.
they can't be recycled. Like, and this is kind of more on a mass scale, but would it? Do you feel like it would be productive if we kind of stopped producing items out of non-recyclable plastics?
I think so. I mean, I think that's definitely valid. We
Yeah.
just need something that's a viable alternative.
Right. Right.
Um, yeah, recycling is kind of suffering right now because of the National Sword program by China. Um,
Mm.
I sound like Donald Trump there, China. So what used to be China used to take a lot of our recycling and our garbage, but then it got to the point where it was so contaminated in China, and like we didn't sort our recycling that well that they cut us off, and it was, I think the program was called the National Sword, and now that recycling doesn't have this output, because recycling is a commodity, it can be bought and sold. It's a valuable material.
Yeah.
Um, because we don't have this big exporting route to China, counties are restricting what they can and can't recycle because they only want to take the valuable stuff.
Right.
So I think we need to shift our materials more towards valuable stuff that we can reuse.
Yeah. And I think kind of the other important point that you made me think of there is also from like a social justice perspective is it's like it's not really fair just to ship our trash off to developing countries not as rich as we are, right? Because that's not really delaying, or that's not fixing the problem. It's just delaying it and giving the problem to somebody else.
Mm.
And just giving us a little bit more time. But um, for me, I think I mentioned this in the past episode, but like for me, social justice means that we see ourselves as members of a global community. And if we see ourselves as global members of a global community, it's not really fair to give that to somebody else and then just be like, oh, we're fine, we're just chilling.
Yeah. One of the things I learned before or in high school was the difference between charity and justice. I mean,
Mm,
charity like it solves surface level things, but justice it solves root causes. So I think we need to solve the root cause, the root issue in
yeah.
our recycling industry.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I feel like so often those two issues get conflated.
Mm-hmm.
I took Dr. Glennon's theology class my freshman year. And the way he breaks it down is he says charity is like donations, monetary fund, giving something to alleviate a problem that is very present, whereas whereas justice is going and fixing it so that the problem is no longer existent.
Mm.
It's like the difference. I mean, I'm making this up now, but it's like the difference between a band-aid and surgery, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and you know what? Julia Walsh, who was the first guest on the podcast, we were talking about, how right now it can be really hard to do like those acts of true justice, because we're all stuck inside our homes. And we were talking about that in regards to like immigration, but I think bringing that idea back to talking about the earth, um, you know, giving like donating a certain amount of money to your local Sierra Club or Sunrise Movement, doing acts of charity to enable justice, and then doing all we can in our own individual homes to minimize waste and that kind of thing is how you do justice in the time of social distancing in regards to taking care of the planet. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. You definitely put that way better than I did.
Oh, stop.
You got away with words, man. I don't know.
I don't know. I just do a lot of talking, so when it sounds good, it sounds good. But
yeah, I don't really know. Like I can't articulate things well, so I just kind of do.
I think you are great at articulating. You're not giving yourself enough credit, but
debatable, but okay.
All right, we can have this fight later.
All right.
So let me think. Let's talk a little bit about Lemoyne and its commitment to sustainability. Do you want to take that away, or?
Well, I'm kind of still working on this. I guess for like plans with like forces.
Mm-hmm.
So I work with Eric Furch a lot.
The best.
Yeah, he's the boy. One of the leads in the sustainability steering committee.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm part of the operations working group, but because of this whole virus thing, our plans were kind of put on hold.
Right.
We had this big plan for Earth Day and all that stuff. But I think I'm kind of still waiting to hear back from him in the committee.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about it?
Yeah. So I actually sit on the committee. I am a member of like the community side of it. So for anybody who's listening who doesn't know, Lemoyne has a steering committee. I don't exactly know what a steering committee is. I just know that it's very important. And it receives like a lot of attention and support from the administration of the college. But basically, it's looking at how to make Lemoyne more, for lack of a better word, more sustainable and compassionate towards our environment, both on campus and then in our local community. And so I feel like I've learned a lot of things through being on this committee that Lemoyne is doing really well that I had no idea about. For example, something that I always think is a really big problem is food waste. Especially on college campuses, like it feels kind of hard to avoid, right? When you have to mass produce an amount of food for a lot of people, but it's an imperfect science, right? Like you never have any idea how many people are going to come in on a given night, but Sodexo does a lot of composting and that kind of thing, which is really great. And then the other thing which I found out, which is really awesome and really cool, is that there's a big push right now, especially among universities, to divest from fossil fuels. And Lemoyne is not invested in any. Like, we don't need to divest because we were never invested, which is really awesome. Yeah. And I think part of that might come from the fact that we're a younger college, in the sense that, I know like a lot of universities who are a lot older kind of built a lot of them, their prestige and their endowment off of fossil fuels, but we didn't do that. I mean, I did talk to Dr. McManus, who is and Eric, they are the co-leads of the committee, and they basically said, if you were to do a deep dive into our investment portfolio, you might find some things that you don't like just because the market is always changing. And Lemoyne specifically does not do the investing. A lot of, like, this isn't uncommon. A lot of institutions will go through a firm to do investing. But what you do with that firm is you say, okay, these are our values as an institution, and we want our investments to line up with those values. But on the outset, we don't have any investment, like, which makes me so happy. Because I know there's a
I'm
yo, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I'm happy too.
Yeah. Well, like, there's a huge push, especially among schools in upstate, to divest. Like, there's a lot of people at Syracuse who are pushing for divestment, a lot of people at Bing who are pushing for divestment. So it's just cool that we're not. And the other thing is that when I was kind of trying to find out information about this, I was looking online and I couldn't find anything. So I assumed the worst. I was like, oh, if there's nothing up there, like, this probably means we've got like so much money coming in from this. But then when I like actually sat down to have the conversation, we don't, which is so cool.
Pretty great.
Yeah. So another thing that you've been working on is this United Nations Declaration for Sustainability. That's not the official title. But do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I was talking with Mia Franco back in the fall, and this was recently coming out of my internship with Foam Cycle. And so my internship was also part of this larger organization. It was called the PSEG Green Teams, and this was set up through Montclair State University. If anyone's looking for any environmental internships, definitely look them up in the summer. They have some
Ooh.
great stuff. So they set up teams of 5 to 6 students, and they each get a company and work on their sustainable development initiatives. And mine was Foam Cycle. But anyway, our group went to the UN for a trip. And
Oh, that's so cool.
yeah, we sat in on this conference. I forget what the conference was called. It was something. It was a higher education conference. It was full of colleges.
Mm-hmm.
But they talked about I think it's the 17 goals of the UN regarding sustainable development, and these are goals set for the UN by 2030, I believe. And it's 17 goals regarding environmental justice, human rights. It also includes like sexual inequality,
Mm-hmm.
racial justice, food insecurity. And I was talking with Mia Franco in the fall, and we both wanted to do something with sustainability on campus outside of forces. And we both thought about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we thought, how could Lemoyne fit in with these goals?
Yeah.
So then we came up with this document, and I mean, this is really Mia's brainchild, but we wrote down things that Lemoyne already did that fit in with the goals, things that it could do in the future, and then ways to improve.
Mm-hmm.
So this document was something we were hoping we could present to the Sustainability Steering Committee and kind of offer some guidance and use it as a tool for certain things that they can do to improve sustainability on campus.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the really cool thing, and you brought this up, but the cool thing about the United Nations Declaration is that it doesn't look at the environment as just like its own thing. It looks at how it parallels so many other kinds of inequality,
Absolutely,
which is
yeah.
really cool. And it's just like this idea. I've probably said this before, but one of my favorite sayings in life is a rising tide lifts all ships. And it's just in the sense like that if we lift everybody up, we can take care of if we take care of the earth, we can lift everybody up. But that, now that I'm saying that out loud, kind of not the quote we want for talking about environmental justice, because probably don't want our oceans to rise that much. We're going to have to find a way to edit that a little bit. Yeah. A rising tide lifts all ships. But, we don't keep the ocean levels low. So, is there anything else that you wanted to tell us about that I haven't asked about or we haven't already touched on?
I think this is me asking the audience for something.
Yeah, do it.
Something I've noticed at Lemoyne is people see problems with sustainability on campus and they don't want to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So like a lot of people complain about the recycling and they'll say, "Oh, it's so bad. No, it's so this and that." But I think you also need to engage with what's going on here.
Yeah.
And I think that if you really care, we should all work together with this extra time that we have off to come up with a game plan for the fall.
Yeah.
And I think we need to jumpstart, or we need to get a jump on what we can do on campus.
Yeah. I'm really glad you said that because I think that, especially on our campus, it is not a lack of concern that is the issue. Um, but it's the fact that it feels so monumental and it feels like nothing that people do, like people feel, and I can fall this to this kind of mindset too, but it feels like, no matter what you do, nothing's going to change. So why do anything?
Yeah.
That kind of hopelessness. But I think that you bring up a really good point that it's like the only way to not feel hopeless is to directly involve yourself.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so I mean, if people are listening to this and they want to get involved, um, reach out to Luke, reach out to me, reach out to other people that we've mentioned, you know, just join that conversation. Speaking of what we can be doing better, I mean, because obviously, like, there's a macro level of this, but like on the individual level, like, do you have any tips for us about things that we can be doing to reduce our waste?
So this is something that I want to get into. It's composting.
Mm,
Composting is a great way to reduce your waste. You can make valuable resources out of your trash. And also, I think that we should all be aware and conscious of our local municipalities' recycling rules.
yeah.
Just I've done recycling so wrong until
Mm-hmm.
like I found out what you're supposed to do,
Yeah.
and it's not just this one set of rules across the entire country. It's so many individual rules and regulations, and I think that the first way to do it is start with what's going on at home. Your home, and I think we should start it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, and it's little things that I do that just make me feel like I'm kind of making a change. Is like, so okay, for example, in school, the trash can that I have in my room, I don't line it with a plastic bag,
Hmm.
which people might think is gross. I promise I'm not throwing out anything that's like would mess that up, but it just makes me feel good because I know that I'm not adding another plastic bag to a landfill, even if I am throwing out other things that can't be helped, like banana peels and that kind of thing. Yeah, so that's something that I do that makes me feel like I'm making a difference. Um, yeah, I don't know. We've started a push in my house to a couple different things. We only buy like fair trade coffee now because we learned that if we're buying from like small local farmers globally, we're doing less to contribute to climate change. And also something that we've talked a little bit about as a family is going to maybe cloth napkins because like the only things that we really throw out are like our napkins and food scraps. And
Hmm.
if we did composting and like cloth napkins, we would drastically reduce the amount of waste we have as a family, which would be really good.
I guess another thing like people can do. Um, so I learned this recently. We're not supposed to have our outlets plugged in constantly because that wastes electricity.
Yeah.
That's something that I started doing.
My mom calls those vampire plugs. I don't really get it, but I think. Oh, okay. My sister's telling me because it sucks the energy without using it.
Huh. I like that
Yeah,
name.
yeah. Vampire plugs. Don't do a vampire plug. I mean, it's really easy to unplug and plug things in. So
Yeah, there's a little thing.
yeah, and by doing little things, like you can feel like you're actually doing something right. So speaking of doing things right, and this is maybe something that we can end on.
Hmm.
Um, so you are an environmental science major,
Yep.
and you obviously care a lot about this.
Yep.
What is happening in the world of science right now, in regards to the climate or not in regards to the climate, that is giving you hope about the future?
Um, So something that a lot of people are noticing is because of our reduced activity, nature's starting or kind of healing with
Mm-hmm.
everything. One of the things I was looking at online in Venice, a place with all these rivers and canals, there's this constant boat traffic because of the social distancing and everyone's indoors. It's given a chance for the system to clear up, and the water's starting to clear up and people could see fish. And I think there was actually dolphins seen in
Oh
Venice.
my God.
Um,
Dolphins are
and
everywhere.
yeah,
They're on this
um,
podcast right now.
word. And I think like a lot of people are just seeing that our habits are, or how impactful our habits are, and how much of a presence we have on the planet. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and I think this provides us an opportunity to see what else has changed because we're not outside doing everything because we're not functioning at normal.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's kind of something that's making me hopeful too, in the sense that obviously, just locking ourselves in our home is not going to be a forever thing, and it's not
No,
going to fix everything.
no.
But just, seeing that like so many factories have closed down, so the overall amount of pollutants in the air is also going down. Yeah, I mean, I think I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, everything being shut down. I mean, it's bad, but
Right.
it shows maybe or it shows how we impact the planet around us.
Right.
Like our day-to-day activities, things that we don't even think about, how they can impact everything, you know?
Yeah. And I think the other thing that is kind of important to bring up now that you said that I made me think of it, is just that you know when we're talking about, so obviously, like, part of the reason a lot of these things are shutting down has also caused people to lose their jobs, and like really different terrible things that have put real economic strains on people. So
Yeah.
it's just this idea that when we do start to push and advocate and work and create a more environmentally equitable world, we really have to focus on the communities that are hurt the most right now, but also would be hurt the most by changing over.
Hmm.
It's not the billionaire fossil fuel kings that are going to be hurt, but it's the people that are working in mines and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So to really take care of them, in a transition to a green economy,
Yeah.
that's important too,
Yeah.
right? 'Cause,
It's not going to happen overnight. Like
right.
this is something that it's going to take years and years for us to transition to slowly. And like something that you're seeing in the energy field is people are slowly starting to move away from fossil fuels and they're moving towards natural gas. And natural gas is seen as this intermediate. It's only seen as
Mm-hmm.
this stopping point, or not a stopping point, just I guess, just one stop on the road to like solar and wind until that
Yeah.
becomes even more commercially viable.
Right. Yeah. And I think specifically like in the Jesuit tradition, which is what we're being educated in, is definitely just this challenge to, when we're thinking about one vulnerable population, we have to think about all vulnerable populations.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right, Luke, we've been at this for almost an hour. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
your insight was super helpful, and I'm feeling a little bit better about the world right now. And it's just nice to hear your voice and check in.
Word.
Word. Everybody go listen to Luke and Matt Bavette's podcast, Muddied Waters. Check out what's happening on Lemoyne's Instagram and Facebook for Ignatian Heritage Week. And until then, we'll talk soon. All right, bye
All right.
guys.
See you later.
Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode, and I hope you'll come back next week. Remember, a new episode drops every Tuesday. You can find this podcast on whatever platform you like to listen to your podcasts on: Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, and soon Apple Podcasts as well. Thanks again to Luke Giunta for joining us today to talk about climate justice, and please connect with us online during this Ignatian Heritage Week. Until then, stay safe, wash your hands, and tell people you love them. Can't wait to talk with you all soon.